much for joining me today.
Thank you. Finally, on the couch.
On the comfy couch, right? In your comfortable shoes, too.
Yes.
So we are here today to talk about your software-defined moment. As a technologist, when you stopped thinking hardware and started thinking about software.
Yeah, I think I go back to, and I've been at this thing for a while. I was in this VMware ecosystem back when Steve Herrod and Raghu Raghuram and those guys created the term software-defined data center. And that was the first time that I think we started thinking about software as more than just an installable thing. So today they'll say software-defined is software only, and you can install it on anything, which is a bit of an abstraction of the term that was originally defined to say software-defined means you abstract, pool, and you make useful with capabilities to certain purposes like consumption and agility and that kind of stuff. So for me, it goes back in the day when this show was a bit of an infancy.
So are there any particular benefits that you see in software and in virtualization that you can't really do in hardware?
Yeah, there's always a hardware assist that you can leverage.
Sure.
And certainly Apple has been the most famous in merging hardware and software together for making something people want to buy more than other things. But I think in data centers, what's different is that you have such a heterogeneous environment of things. Mm-hmm. So you have to build software that can take and abstract all that in a way that makes it easier and more simplistic to bring forward for people to manage the environments. That's frankly the big difference you see in cloud. The difference between a virtualized on-prem environment and a cloud environment is the cloud environment is built for almost no heterogeneity. It's a big abstraction of something that's built to a fairly common low variable situation. So instead of building big vertical stacks of stuff like we do today in data centers, they're more horizontal stacks of services across regions. And that's why it's so attractive. And the challenge for someone like a VMware at this show is how do you build that model that takes all that on-prem mix of just a wide variety of things, and you can see it all on the show floor represented by a variety of technologies, versus going to the hyperscalers and see 2 or 3 major configurations that are built in a completely different distributed model.
So for those that are just starting out on their virtualization or their software journey, do you have any advice for people? Like, maybe they're worried they'll software define themselves out of a job. What advice would you have for them that are just starting out?
Yeah, I would think the first thing you look for is, how do you zoom things out to make it more simple and make it easier for people to look at the majors versus the minors. Don't get caught up in the features as much as what it equals. Also try to look at it from a cloud perspective, and if you consume from cloud, just like we consume from Gmail or Google Files or Dropbox, we're consuming functions. We're not consuming a bunch of technology. Mm-hmm. We have a function that we like that we're buying, and we're buying it as a service. That's the furthest end of the equation, and everything else back down to the piece and the parts of what kind of flash we're using on that particular email box. Who really cares?
Yeah. And looking forward, are there any emerging trends or announcements that you're excited about?
I think there's a big divergence in this industry from infrastructure to things above infrastructure. We see this in everyday life. They talked about, Pat did on the keynote, with the self-driving data center, mm-hmm. which is a bit of a takeoff of the self-driving car, the autonomous vehicle. But the auto industry is a good case study on this, in the sense that they're not just moving to all electric, but they're also moving to highly autonomous, like miniature data centers. And the ability to drive with all completing functions of a vehicle without a driver is just one example, as well as the ability to go into an AI, ML, and DL type of environment where you have deep learning and a lot of efficiencies for the new business models. We can't even fathom right now the business models that are going to be thriving 5 years from now. Just like it's hard to really anticipate how well some of the businesses are doing today 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So this acceleration of these things beyond infrastructure make both this show a challenge to stay relevant and frankly, for us to stay ahead of the rapid pace of the new things like AI coming that is going to reshape the way we think about everything.
So, and I know AI is always kind of a hot item at conferences. It seems like every year more and more. What about it do you think is so exciting?
Well, and I'm not a huge expert on AI. We have certain people at our company at NetApp that have that expertise, and we're seeing a lot of interest. We have new ONTAP AI solution that we brought to market with NVIDIA. And me, for the VMware Alliance, we try to abstract that back into how does the infrastructure then serve that mission through the GPUs. There is still a bit of a loose connection that is evolving. Kind of like DevOps 5 years ago, as it was just emerging as more of a culture, a way to operate that brought dev and ops together in something that was frankly more agile for the business. Now it's become more matured. You could argue, and like for us, we've got these 6 capabilities that we've identified. It becomes much more like formulating your 401k. If you understand how to compartmentalize the capabilities and then look at it from a maturity model, like where you're at versus where you want to go, I think something like AI and all these things that grow up in that space will go through that same maturity cycle, and we'll be able to flush out more of the ecosystem, because AI isn't just one thing, it's an ecosystem of things. It's things like TensorFlow as a framework, it's ISV applications, say in the auto industry or in the banking industry or these other industry apps. Things that frankly very few people at this show would even know how to comment on.
So for those that are not at VMworld, is there any advice that you would have, maybe somebody looking to get into this type of a conference in the future, or just into this industry in general? Any advice?
Yeah, I think start small, be realistic, don't be overwhelmed by the complexity at first. It's, I suppose, a lot like going to college or doing any kind of training course. You don't run that mile in one step. You take it little bits at a time. I think it's a lot like running, actually. If you start running for any distance, you start with 1 mile, and then next week you go up to 3 miles, and then eventually you're doing 5 miles, and then eventually you're running a marathon. So it just kind of comes together that way. Just take things in patient little bite size to let you mentally digest and process what all this is. Because for those of us that have been here for a decade or whatever the longevity of this conference has been, can reflect back and see that progression that we've all kind of gone through. Mm-hmm. We've grown up with this. We're natives to this VMware thing. There's a lot of folks coming into it that are immigrants that, frankly might look at it and make it feel like it might be intimidating, but it's like anything in life. You just got to take it in bite-sized chunks.
That's a great advice, yeah. Thank you so much, Keith, for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome.
When you are ready to make your tech confession, join us at techconfessionstheshow.com.